Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Mariya. This channel is about spirituality. Please subscribe below so we can be YouTube friends. This video is about Life Path 1, specifically the challenges of Life Path 1, as well as the shadows of somebody with the first life path. I'm excited about doing an entire series of this. This is something that came through as a request from my community, and I thought it was going to be so fascinating to dive into the shadows of each of the life paths for you. A while ago, I did a broader video about each of the life paths. We're going to link it down below so you can check it out. And this one is a little bit of a different take on the life path and something that not a lot of people talk about. All right, so let's dive into the shadows and the challenges of Life Path 1. Somebody who's a Life Path 1 came here to figure out how to be a leader. It's a very masculine life path. Not to say that, a lot of women are not experiencing it. We all have energies that are masculine and energies that are feminine inside. Now, Life Path 1 is rooted with its own specific set of challenges that is so unique to it. And so very often the shadows that would come through on this path are very similar across different people. Now, if you are a Life Path 1, you may not have 100% of everything that I mention, but you would probably have a very strong resonance with a lot of what is being said in this video. One of the shadows of Life Path 1 is ego. Now, ego is a temporary identity. It's a temporary way of how you look at the world. It's just with Life Path 1, the pull towards self is so strong that it may become my way or the highway. Somebody who is here to walk the Life Path 1 either came with a lot of energy from the get-go, or as part of their challenge is going through trials and tribulations to recoup the lost energy, or be able to absorb a lot of energy because it's an energy-intensive path. It's the path of fire. It's a trailblazer energy. As such, one of the shadows that comes front and center for this path is selfishness, high degrees of selfishness, potential shadow of even narcissism, low empathy, if that is a shadow, but sometimes it may be hard for Life Path 1 folks to relate to others. Now, let me preface this by saying, when we look at numerology in the same way that when we look at astrology, somebody's map is not complete if you just look at one number. In the same way that I couldn't tell you everything about a person from their sun sign in astrology, I cannot tell you everything about a person from a life path. I can trace the trends though, right? And these trends can be quite telling. But of course, in order for me to do the full-on reading, there are all of these other numbers that we have to consider. And yet, there are some similarities. For a lot of people with a Life Path 1, it's almost like they have a veil of between them and others. So it's harder for them to perceive the world at the point of view of another person. That's why they tend to have, all things considered equal, lower levels of empathy and a harder time understanding why people act a certain way. As such, Life Path 1 is actually extremely prone to being betrayed because they literally don't see any of the signs until the very last moment. So the shadow of betrayal, of being betrayed, is very strong with this life path. The shadow of manipulation is also very strong. Now, if you have shown up here as a Life Path 1, it is because you are on a path of examining and accumulating your own power. What is power? Your ability to impact the world around you. If you are not able to do that in a direct way, and very often our power is connected to our solar plexus. So the stronger the relationship that we have with our dad, the stronger our impact, or rather there is a correlation to how much we feel or we perceive we're able to impact the world around us. Some Life Paths 1 show up with a damaged solar plexus. And when that happens, their life could become a means of trying to regain that power or earn that power one way or another. So one of the shadows, one of the aspects of being a Life Path 1 could be a challenging relationship with your father. It could be a very authoritarian father that made it really hard for you to put in a word. It could have been a father that was a little bit neglectful. It could have been a father that was very opinionated, and it was not okay for you to have your opinion or walk your path. And because of that, one of the things that you may have cultivated is the ability to stand up for yourself. Now, with some life paths 1, manipulation and manipulating others into doing what you want can be a coping mechanism, can be a strategy, a shadow strategy. Like I said, not everybody comes with a very healed solar plexus. It is through the healed solar plexus that we're able to impact change head on. We're able to move through conflict in a constructive way without walking all over other people. And we don't have to resort to manipulation, which is a covert way of getting what it is that we want. Unfortunately, for some life paths 1, it would be hard, and manipulation would be very much a technique, a covert way of getting their needs met. Another shadow aspect of life path 1 is a wounded heart. Very often they come with either like a very toughened up heart or a closed up heart. So one of the challenges over here for this life path is to open up the heart to guidance. Life paths 1 don't always have an easy time connecting with higher realms and higher guidance because they usually come with very active 3 lower chakras. So the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. So it may be more challenging for them to rise up. So a lot of the shadows that we would be looking at for the life path 1 would be within the first 3 chakras. Specifically, if we're talking about the root, it is the shadow of aggression, the shadow of wrath, right? Having a short fuse. Now, this may come across as you being aggressive, or it may come across through you being triggered by people who are aggressive or too opinionated. Either though, whether you display a characteristic or you're triggered by a characteristic, you have it inside of you. In fact, when somebody triggers you, it's often because you deny yourself the right to behave a certain way, and they become a trigger. It's almost like, how dare they do this, where I myself have denied myself that. And so that's really what most of the triggers are, if somebody triggers you in a negative way. And so for a lot of life path 1s, it would be somewhere along the lines of either suppressed anger, where like you almost don't even know where it's there, so it really triggers you when it shows up, or you knowing that you have a short fuse and knowing that you tend to act first and think later. Haste, oh my God, impatience, big shadow for life path 1. They want things yesterday, they want it done perfectly, all of the good stuff. Another thing with life path 1, though, is they tend to be really hard on themselves. So the inner critic tends to be very loud. Some life paths 1 come with a wounded self-worth, sense of self-worth. So low self-esteem is definitely right here with this. Abandonment issues can be pretty strong with life path 1, and how abandonment, what are the coping mechanisms around that, right? Like hyper-independence. Very much a shadow of this life path, and hyper-independence to a degree where like you feel like you don't need anybody, like you don't need a relationship, you don't want a family. For some life paths 1, it would be like leaving your family to immigrate to a different country when you're young. So kind of like that form of like going through a separation. It could also be especially prevalent if one of your parents is very opinionated or is very overbearing. And so that could be a part of reclaiming your own sanity, frankly. Not always. Sometimes it's running away from something. Another challenge for life path 1 is communication. Specifically communicating in a way that is not intimidating to people and that is not confusing to people. Because every life path 1 is meant to be a leader or comes here to learn some leadership qualities. But it is through communication that we often get to lead, not through coercion and not through force, really. And so a lot of life path 1 would come either with a wounded throat or some kind of challenge or fear around speaking freely. Maybe they would born in a household where that was not okay. Maybe they haven't had really a great experience, or like a role model of somebody who communicated with grace and poise and was able to get their point across and get their needs met. So communication issues are very much in the shadow. Another thing that's in the shadow is building strong relationships with people. Ones may have issues around commitment. They may have issues around upholding the vows and integrity, potentially, like sticking, doing what they said they were going to do, sticking with it. There's a little bit of like, a lot of ones are talkers and not always doers. Like there's a little bit of that going on. And because they're very much in their own zone, and because they're such a leader, they can be very pushy in relationships, are not very tolerant in relationships. And it's a challenge for them to not alienate everybody in their household, because it's again, my way or the highway. So they tend to be a little bit pushy. They tend to be a little bit more self-centered. They tend to be less forgiving. They tend to be a lot more strict with their children. That's another potential shadow aspect to watch out for. If you're Life Path 1, do watch and monitor, if you have kids, how you think about them, how you think about their failures, how you think about their aspirations in life, because ones also tend to be very judgmental. And they're very judgmental of themselves, obviously, hence the loud inner critic, but they're also very judgmental of their loved ones, and specifically their children. So know that as a Life Path 1, you're probably more critical of your children than most anybody else. 7s are also quite critical, but like 1 and 7, they tend to be the tough cookies. And know that, you may right now be having a very palpable impact on their psyche that they're going to have to work through later on in life. So just go easy, go gentle, because there is a little bit of the, the hot streak running in you. There's also a little bit of a, Life Path 1 is like the conquest in the making. It's that colonial spirit. It's a little bit of like imperialism. It's like, I want to build my empire and I don't care who I break on the way of getting there. So just watch out, because that's also very much a shadow, like running so fast at hyper speeds with very little regard as to the damage that you're causing in the meantime. If you're a Life Path 1, please let me know in the comments if this resonates. If you would be so kind as to even tell me which of the shadows that I've named you have noticed in yourself or your loved ones who are a Life Path 1, that would make my day. Thank you all so much. I hope this resonates. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, loves.